All right, hi everybody. Welcome to Computer Science at RPI's Colloquium series. Today we're going to have a speaker, Shreyas. He's an assistant professor from the University of Toronto. He's going to be giving us a talk about learning the product rankings that are robust to fake users on e-commerce platforms. So take it away.
Thanks, George. Thanks for the invitation. It's always great to be back here at RPI. For those of you who don't know, I was a PhD student at RPI and Elliot was my supervisor. So I wish I could be there in person, but it's still very nice to be able to come give a talk. All right, so I'm very excited to share my work. And this is some very recent work I've had with my wonderful co-authors, Negin Golrizai, Vahide Manshadi, and John Schneider, whom you can see on the bottom right-hand side. In particular, this is motivated by the recent spate of fake reviews and fake clicks that are becoming more and more prominent on e-commerce platforms. Now, if any of you have questions, feel free to interrupt me at any point during my talk. I don't know if I can see if you raise your hand or post a comment on the chat. So just feel free to start talking, and I'll try to have a few break points in the middle so you can ask questions as well. All right.
Try and interrupt if someone puts something in the chat if you can't see it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, George. All right. So I want to keep this talk a little interactive because I know it's easy to lose focus on online seminars, and I've been guilty of sending emails on the side myself. So let me begin with a fun thought experiment. I want you all to put yourself in the shoes of a seller on Amazon who, no pun intended, is selling women's shoes. Okay. So you come up with this fantastic product, you put this up on Amazon, your price is super competitive, and you have local supply chain, so thankfully you're not stuck in the Suez Canal or the rest of your shoemakers. Now you seem to put this product on Amazon, you think, okay, I'm going to be a millionaire in a few months. Now unfortunately it's been a month, no one's purchasing your product. It's been 6 months, no one's still looking at your product, and it's been a year, and unfortunately you're not getting any sales at all. So what do you think is going wrong? And I'm hoping that one of you can chime in and answer. If you're a seller on Amazon and you're in a very competitive market, what's the number one thing that you care about after your price and getting the product up and running? Anyone wants to chime in? Again, there are no wrong answers here, so just go for it.
Where you appear on the list when somebody searches for you?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Dhruva is also kind of close enough to the answer, but basically the most important thing once you get your product out there is that you want to show up at the top of the list as soon as someone searches for you, right? And in particular, in this case of women's slippers, it turns out you're competing with 40,000 other people. So forget being on, page 4 or 5, usually 400 pages of search results. And there's an old joke that goes, if you want to hide something, you should hide it on the second page of the Google search results because no one's ever going to go there. So in Amazon's case, for example, it turns out that there's been a lot of research looking at these position effects, and 70% of people don't even go beyond the first page. Okay. So if you, by mistake or due to the algorithm, are ranked on the second page, then you're losing out on 70% of a potential customer base. And that's huge. So this notion that people don't go beyond the first page is a special case of a more general phenomena that behavioral scientists refer to as the position bias. Now, this is a fancy term for something that all of us have internalized. And what this basically means is that more people are likely to examine the top ranked products than the ones at the bottom. Okay? As an example, look at this plot on eBay's click probabilities or the propensity to view products as you go beyond the top ranked products. So forget rank 50, right? Even at around rank 25, we have hardly 10% of my customers who reach all the way down to the 25th product. So this is a big deal for sellers to be ranked at the top. Now, given how important this is, as researchers, we have one very important question that comes to mind. How on earth does Amazon or do the other sellers end up ranking these products? Okay, this is an important question, and it's quite literally $1 million question, whether you're Amazon or these individual sellers. So while we don't know the exact algorithm that Amazon uses, we have a pretty good sense for how the product rankings come about. And in particular, All right, I'll keep an eye on the chat when I ask questions. Thank you so much. So in particular, here is how these product ranking algorithms work. And they use this notion of online or reinforcement learning. So every time a user comes in, the user looks at a ranking, they perform a certain set of actions. So for example, they can click on some products, they can purchase some products, they can add things to the cart, they can leave a review and so on. Now, all of these customer actions go into these black box machine learning algorithm. This algorithm comes up with a composite popularity metric. Okay, so using all of this data, the algorithm identifies how popular each product is. Now, obviously, each platform's composite popularity metric is proprietary, so I can't tell you exactly what goes into it, but I think we can all kind of guess as to how it works, because in particular, the more clicks that I have, the more purchases that I have, the more likely my product is gauged to be popular. Okay. Now, once I come up with this composite popularity metric, I'm going to rank the products in decreasing order of their popularity. This general phenomena is known as ranking by popularity, and most platforms out there used some variant of this popular algorithm. Okay, so far so good. But if you, like me, think a lot about how to break things out in the real world, you're going to immediately notice a vulnerability in the system. Because if you're a seller, remember, I care a lot about my product being popular and being ranked at the top. So there's a lot of opportunity for me to manipulate this data to boost the position of my product. Okay, because the data determines what products get ranked on top. By manipulating the data, I get to manipulate the algorithm. I get to manipulate what my customers see, which in turn affects my purchase decisions. Good. So it turns out this kind of manipulation is not just a theoretical exercise we're talking about. This is something very, very common on online platforms. So you have all kinds of manipulation out there, ranging from click bots and click farms to fake purchases, a phenomenon known as brushing, and the ubiquitous fake reviews, which I'm sure many of you are familiar about. Okay? And in particular, there's been a couple of wonderful sting studies recently where people have identified large Facebook groups where people buy and sell fake reviews. And if any of you are interested and if you want to kind of join this burgeoning fake review industry, I think you can make up to like $6 for a fake review. All right. So this is a big problem. Okay. And as we mentioned previously, many of these are aimed at boosting the position of the product in the algorithm. So at this point, maybe some of you are going to ask me, Shreyas, I agree that this is a big problem, but surely Amazon is doing something to stop this, right? Because I think even they can detect that this is a huge issue. And I agree with you. Many of the big platforms, including Amazon, are trying to tackle this as severely as possible. So in Amazon's case, for example, in addition to spending thousands of millions of dollars and hiring people to manually look at these reviews, the majority of their tactics fall under one of two categories. So one is they use this behavioral analysis to separate bots from real users. So this can be based on your click patterns. This can be based on how frequently you log in, your IP address, and so on. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there's also a lot of work in natural language processing and identifying fake news, fake reviews, and things like that. To be completely fair, these efforts have met with some moderate success. But unfortunately, that's what it's remained, because even the state-of-the-art methods catch fewer than 70% of suspicious activity. Okay? So while these efforts are being widely deployed, and while they are successful to a certain extent, unfortunately, they're not fully successful in catching all of this bad activity. So this really leads us to a cat and mouse problem, because on the one hand, you have a platform spending enormous resources, right? Hiring 8,000 people is no joke to take legal action against these click farms. Now, for those of you who've been following the Facebook bad news recently, you will also notice that they hired like thousands and thousands of people to detect fake news as well. So this is not just something that's related to Amazon. But at the same time, these fake users and these bots are becoming increasingly sophisticated. So every time you come up with a new fancy algorithm, these fake users come up with something smarter to stay one step ahead of you. So really, in my opinion, we need to start rethinking this whole approach of dealing with fraudulent activity. So in particular, I want to pose the following question. Instead of just reacting to the fake users, or instead of playing whack-a-mole, can we really be proactive and try to come up with a different approach to tackle fake reviews or fake clicks and so on and so forth? Okay, so that's going to be the fundamental question that drives this work. And let me kind of formalize this using the language of robust optimization. So we want to come up with a learning algorithm that identifies the optimal product ranking from consumer click data despite the presence of fake users. Okay, so I want to give you all a minute to internalize what this research problem means. I don't want to just catch the fake reviewers, fake clicks, for example. Whether or not you catch them is irrelevant. I want to come up with an algorithm that can identify the optimal outcome despite the presence of fake users. Okay? Now, what makes this problem particularly challenging is that the identity of these fake users are not known in advance. So let me give you an example. If let's say you have 100 data points and I know 20 of them are fake and 80 of them are real, then solving for the optimal whatever is quite easy, right? You hide the 20 that are fake, you use the remaining 80 to identify, let's say, the optimal product ranking, and you're good to go. But what makes this challenging is that although you have an 80-20 mix, I don't know which 20 are real and which 20 are fake. Sorry, which 80 are real and which 20 are fake. So because of this, I have to learn from all my data points, but some of these data points are specifically geared to kind of spoof or trick my algorithm. Right? So to conclude, I want to come up with a robust algorithm that identifies the optimal product ranking based on consumer click data, despite the fact that some of these data points are fake and some of these customers are real. Right. Let me stop here and see if there are any questions. Is this problem statement clear to everyone? I'll introduce the model in like one slide. Feel free to post on chat if you want me to clarify something, or else I'm going to move on. Okay. One last thing before I go to the next step. As we looked at earlier, there are a number of ways by which fake users can spoof your algorithm. These include fake clicks, fake purchases, and fake reviews. Now, for the rest of this talk, I'm going to particularly focus on fake clicks. Now, this is for a couple of reasons. So one, whatever techniques we develop for fake clicks can really be translated to fake reviews, but in particular, fake reviews are a little easier to tackle because you also have the addition of fraud detection tools, which you don't generally have for fake clicks. Okay, so that makes fake clicks in some sense the most difficult version of this problem because it's much harder to detect fake clicks than it is to detect fake reviews. Right. I think I see Noah's question. So we don't really have any incentives going on here. This is going to be an optimization problem. I'll talk about this in 1 second, where you're going to have some real users and some fake users. And the goal here is to come up with an algorithm that's robust. So we want to be able to converge to the optimal outcome, even if there are some users trying to trick you into converging to suboptimal outcomes. All right. Yeah. So I'll explain what fake clicks are in a couple of slides. So let me go over the model. I think that will clarify some of this. So we're going to build on this very popular modeling tool that's known as the Cascade models, which are very, very common in lots of different areas, including advertisements and product rankings. So here is how this works. Let's assume that we have n different products. Okay. Now my customers arrive sequentially, and each customer has a click probability for different products. So mu1 is my click probability for product 1, mu2 is my click probability for product 2, and so on. Now here's how the consumer behavior model works. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to start looking at the product in the first position. Okay? I present a ranking of products to the consumers. Now, let's say that the product at the first position is product I. So I'm going to click on this product with some probability mu I that depends on the identity and the features and the price of this product. Now, the minute I click on this product, I'm going to assume that the consumer is satisfied. Okay? The consumer's goal here is to identify at least one product that satisfies her criteria. So the minute the consumer clicks on this product, they're going to exit the platform because they found at least one product that satisfies their needs, and you can assume that they go on to purchase this product. Now, what happens if they don't click on this product? Well, if you don't click on this product, one of two things can happen. Okay, so with exit probability Q1, I'm going to leave the platform. This can happen when I'm convinced after looking at a few products that I've not found anything that's suitable to my requirements. And with probability 1 minus Q1, I go back to looking at product 2, and then the same cycle continues. Okay, so I click on product 2 with some probability. Once I click on product 2, I'm satisfied. if I don't click on product 2, I could either exit or go on to product 3, so on and so forth. Just to summarize, real customers come in sequentially. Each customers view the products in a particular order, starting with the top ranked products and then working your way down to the bottom. Now, every time I click on a product, it means that I'm satisfied. But if I don't click on a product, it means that with some probability, I could proceed to the next product. With some probability, I can just completely exit the platform. All right. Now, so far, I've described the behavior of the real customers. Let's go over to the fake users. Now, I have a total of T customers, out of which F are fake. Now, these fake users can be completely adversarial. Okay, so I'm going to use the language of adversarial machine learning to model these. Now, in particular, since my users arrive sequentially, I'm going to assume that these F fake users are going to can arrive at any point in my horizon. So they can arrive at the beginning, they can arrive in the middle, they can arrive in the end, and so on. And the behavior of these fake users can be completely adversarial and sophisticated. So in particular, these users can do one of two things to boost the position of their products. So they can click on specific products in order to boost its position. Why is that? Because by repeatedly clicking on my product, I'm leading the algorithm to think that this product is more popular than it actually is. Okay? The second thing they can do is they can completely avoid clicking on certain products to downplay or to lead the platform to underestimate its position. This is super important in ranking problems. This is completely unavoidable. Why is that? Because the platform's goal is to identify the click probability of each product. Okay, so the click probability of a product is the numerator, which is the number of clicks divided by the number of people who viewed the product in total. So really, the fake users can affect both the numerator by clicking on a product and the denominator by viewing a product and not clicking on it. All right. Now, again, let me reiterate the most important thing. As a platform, I have the data from all my consumers, so I can see what products they've clicked on. But unfortunately, I cannot distinguish which of these clicks are real and which of these clicks are fake. Good. So let me finally lead to our optimization problem. So I'm going to look at this from an online learning perspective. If you don't know what that is, let me explain what that is in a second. So the platform's problem is to maximize the probability that the customer clicks on at least one product. Okay. So in other words, the platform's goal is to maximize customer engagement. And we're going to assume that a customer is engaged if they click on at least one product in the assortment. Now, the way the learning algorithm works is my consumers arrive sequentially. I observe the click behavior of the customers and I observe the exit position of the customers. So in other words, I get to see what products they viewed and if any clicks, whether there are any clicks at all. Now, using the data, the clicks and the views for the first T-1 customers, I have to select a ranking for the next customer. A ranking is just an ordering of the product. And remember, the ordering matters a lot, right? Because consumers can exit in the middle. So really, by choosing a suboptimal ordering, I can lose out on many, many customers. Now, the optimal ranking, just to clarify, is one that arranges the products in the decreasing order of their click probability. Why is that? Because my goal is to ensure that the customer clicks on at least one product. So by arranging them in decreasing order of their click probability, I ensure that I maximize the probability that the arriving customer clicks on a product. Now, since this is a learning problem, I'm going to look at this from the framework of widget minimization. If this doesn't make sense to you, that's totally fine. All I have to do is I have an algorithm that selects a ranking pi t. So I'm going to look at the number of clicks that my algorithm gets, and I'm going to compare it to the optimal ranking that selects the same ranking pi star in every single round. Okay. Now, what makes this challenging, even without the fake users, is that I don't know my click probabilities. If I knew my click probabilities, it's just a simple sorting problem. But because I don't know my click probabilities, I have to learn them and then use that to rank products. Now, additionally, this is already, by the way, a very popular problem known as the cascade problem or the learning to rank problem. Now, on top of that, I have fake users trying to trick my algorithm. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to mention before moving on to the results is that we look at this problem under two settings. The first setting is called the fake aware settings. Now, I still don't know which of my data points are from real customers and which ones are from fake users. But what I do know is the total number of fake users F. Turns out that even having this information can make a huge difference. The second thing is the completely general setting known as the fake oblivious setting, where I have no clue on even how many fake users there are. So this is going to be the most challenging setting, and our algorithm for this is going to be more sophisticated. All right. So I will stop here and take questions on chat, or if anyone wants to interrupt me, go ahead. If you want me to clarify some aspect of the model, please let me know. I'm happy to do so. Or if you want me to repeat something, I can also do that. I think some of you asked some questions on how fake users can boost the products. So I hope that's clear to you from the previous slides. So remember, fake users can do one of two things. They can either click on a product or they can withhold a click. Okay. Right. I'm assuming there are no other questions. If you have, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I don't want to go too deep into the related work, but what I do mention is that this work builds on this recent stream of work that you see at the top, which is called as learning with corrupted data. So in particular, for those of you who are familiar with the online learning literature, usually you'd see two types of problems, right? One is the stochastic bandits, where customer behavior comes from a distribution or from some stochastic setting, or adversarial bandits, where customers can behave in a completely adversarial way. So this new work generally tries to get the best of both worlds. So in particular, you have some customers behaving in a stochastic manner, and you have some behaving in an adversarial manner. And the goal here is try to combine both, but see if you can recover the regret bounds that the stochastic setting has. So what this work does is it extends the existing work on this learning with corrupted data towards more combinatorial settings, such as the Cascade setting that I introduced. Okay. Now, the second thing is there's been a lot of work on product ranking and learning to rank problems as well. So this tries to build on that work by coming up with learning to rank algorithms that are more robust. All right. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me, or let me give you a quick summary of what to expect. So I'm going to start with traditional algorithms, because those of you who have taken a learning course or are familiar with online learning, you're going to think about the existing algorithms, and it's worth wondering whether or not they're robust. Now, once that's done, I'm going to introduce two algorithms that are called as the fake aware ranking algorithm and the fake oblivious ranking algorithm with cross-learning. So we're going to call them FAR and FORK. And if I'm being completely honest, the acronyms are the main contribution of this paper because it took us more time to come up with the acronyms than the algorithms themselves. All right. So in the last part of this talk, I'll talk a little bit about how you can try to leverage some structural information from this setting to see if you can improve these bounds that I have previously. Okay. And if time permits, I will mention a couple of things about some simulations and some interesting ideas that we have. All right. So let's dig in. All right, first question. Obviously, we aren't the first people to look at online learning. There's been tons of work. And in particular, when you talk about multi-arm bandits, people have looked at algorithms like UCB, which have done quite well, both in theory and in practice. Okay, so let's use this as a starting point. How do these UCB type algorithms work? Are they any good when you have fake users? And the first result that we have is somewhat surprising. What we show is that these UCB type algorithms, and not just UCB, any algorithm that uses UCB like ideas, and we formalize this notion in the paper, incurs terrible regret even with just log T amount of fake users. Okay? Now remember, our goal here is to get the regret to be as small as possible. So in particular, I want the regret to be constant or logarithmic in T. But what we have here is regret that's linear in T. And it turns out to get this linear regret, I only need a small amount of fake users. Pretty surprising but powerful result. How does this work? I'm going to introduce the bad example, and I want to use this as a launch pad to kind of introduce you all to the world of online learning and multi-arm bandits, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So here is how this example is going to work. We're going to have two products. Now, my fake users are going to arrive at the beginning of the process. They're going to click on the bad product so that the platform overestimates the reward of the bad product. They're going to avoid clicking on the good product so that the platform underestimates the reward of the good product. Now, once the fake users are done making mischief, the real users are going to arrive. But unfortunately, when the real users arrive, the platform has an inflated sense of how good the bad product is. So it's going to start ranking that at the top. And that's going to lead to a lot of loss down the line when it comes to my real customers. Okay, so that's going to be the intuition. But let me formalize this and with a nice example. So I'm going to use wireless earbuds as a running example because I recently purchased these on Amazon. And for those of you who also search for this, this market is a complete mess. There are tons and tons of products that look very similar. And I'm pretty sure half of these have fake reviews. So this is a good starting point. So let's assume there are only 2 earbuds, right? Although in reality, there are millions. In particular, one of them is a good product. So this has a click probability of 1. The other is a bad product. So that has a click probability of 1/2. What that means is that only half of my customers will click on the bad product, but all of my customers will click on the good product. Now, the second thing is the exit probabilities. So in particular, I'm going to assume that Q1 is almost 1, which means that most of my customers only look at the top ranked product and they completely skip the product at the second rank. Okay? The reason this kind of mimics the behavior of customers in the real world, because we know that customers don't go generally beyond the first page of results. So you can think of this as a stylized or a toy example, which sort of mimics the kind of behaviors you'd see in a more general setting. Okay? Now, once I have this setting, let me introduce you to how these multi-arm bandit algorithms work. So in particular, these bandit algorithms, they maintain the click probabilities of different products at every point in time. And in particular, they maintain an upper bound on the click probability. So how that works is that for each of these two products, I'm going to maintain a constant, a number that's mu1 hat. That's going to be the empirical click probability of the product. That's R1 plus some confidence interval that's log t divided by eta 1. Okay, let's go over this a bit carefully. And this is going to be the only math in the rest of this talk, hopefully. So R1 is the fraction of consumers who clicked on this product. Okay, so R1 is a number between 0 and 1, and it's your empirical click probability. The second term that you see, that's log t by eta, this can be thought of as an upper bound, where eta is the amount of number of customers who looked at this product. So the more the feedback I get on the product, the more confident I am in my decision. And that's when eta becomes larger and my R1 term starts dominating. Okay. But the basic idea here is that this drives the algorithm to get more feedback on specific products so that I can quickly converge to a good estimate of its click probability. All right. Now the same thing is true for the second product, but you have R2 plus log t by eta 2. I hope everyone's clear with this. If you want me to go over this again, I'm happy to do so. So please let me know on chat. Now, given the setting, here's how my instance is going to be constructed. So at the beginning, I'm going to insert log t number of fake users. And these fake users are going to not click on any product. Okay. So at the end of the first round of fake users, if you go back to this term, R1 and R2 are going to be 0. And since eta is basically approximately something like 4 or 16 log t, the second term is going to look like 1 divided by 4. Okay. So I'm going to particularly construct this so that the number of fake users are basically 1/4. Sorry, the click probability estimates for these products are basically 0.25. So far, so good. Now, in the second round, I'm going to have another log t set of fake users. But these guys are going to be a little different because these fake users, they're going to skip the good product and click on the bad product. Okay. So in particular, I'm going to start now boosting the R2 term so that R2 starts approaching 0.5 and my overall click probability is going to become much for the second product is going to be much larger than the first product. Okay? So once the fake users are done with their behavior, my platform is going to think with very high probability that the first product is quite bad, whereas the second product is much better. Now this is a problem because once it's made these estimations, it's going to start ranking the bad product on top. Now, when my real customers arrive, Shishan, I'll get your question in 1 second. So when my real customers arrive, these customers are only going to look at the first product. So most of these customers are going to look at my bad product. Half of them are going to click on it. Half of them are not going to click on it, and they're going to exit after the first position. So what really happens is that because of the behavior of these fake users, only half of my customers are satisfied. Whereas in the optimal ranking, I would place all my products, I would place product 1 in the top position. So all my customers are going to be happy. Okay. So in conclusion, because of the behavior of fake users, I only get to satisfy half of my T customers, whereas in the optimal ranking, I would satisfy all T of my customers. So the total regret or the loss is going to be 1/2 of T. So I think Shishan asked a question, why do the fake users click on the bad product? So the way you should be thinking of this is that the maker of this suboptimal product has hired a bunch of fake users. They've paid money to get these fake users to click on this product to boost their position and maybe avoid clicking on the competitor's product to bring down their position. Okay. As we mentioned, the fake users can be completely arbitrary. So they can click on any product, they can not click on products at all. So in particular, we want an adversarial behavior. So we want to design algorithms that are good, no matter how these fake users behave. All right, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so what we've really shown is that these traditional bandit algorithms, such as UCB, can get really poor regret. And in particular, the regret is linear, even with log T fake users. So if UCB does not work, what can we do? So to answer the question, I'm going to start with our first setting, which is the fake aware ranking setting. So remember, in this setting, we already know the number of fake users. So how can I use this information to come up with a good ranking algorithm? Okay. So so Bolon is asking, do we have to know which products are good and which products are bad before coming up with this? We don't have to know that. And in fact, what makes the problem hard is that I have no clue on the click probabilities of different products. All I'm doing in this problem is that I'm coming up with one example where fake users can spoof the system to come up with a ranking that's completely suboptimal. So I think the question that we are thinking of asking is, how do we design the behavior of fake users to know which product is good and which products are bad? But in reality, I don't have to know that. All the fake users have to do, and mind you, I'm not designing the fake users. The fake users are likely to be hired by some outside entity. So all the fake users are going to do is that they want to try boosting the click probability of certain specific products. And in the process of clicking on some products, they're going to be bringing down the click probability of other products. Okay. So these behaviors happen organically in the setting. So all I'm doing in this example is showing you that these behaviors can result in highly suboptimal outcomes. Okay. And Bolon, does that answer your question? All right, I'm going to assume it does. So let's start with the traditional algorithm and let's try building it along 2 dimensions. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the traditional UCB type algorithm. Now, instead of just maintaining an upper bound on the click probability of each product, I'm going to start maintaining a product relationship graph. So here's how this graph is going to be. So the nodes of these graphs are the different products. Now, the edges in this graph represent some sort of a dominance relationship. So in particular, I'm going to add an edge between product I and product J, as long as I'm confident that product J is much better than product I. Okay. So instead of just maintaining click probabilities, I'm going to maintain a graph which tells you the relationships between the different products. I'll explain why this is important in 1 minute. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain confidence intervals for each product. This is a very classic idea on learning, right? So at every point in your learning process, I have an empirical click probability, Rj, for product J. Now, in addition to this empirical click probability, I'm going to maintain an upper confidence interval and a lower confidence interval so that with high probability, the product's true click probability lies between the upper and the lower intervals. Now, the important thing that we do in this work is that I'm going to extend these intervals so that they're proportional to f. Okay. So previously, we saw that these intervals were something like log t divided by eta. Now I have a log t term divided by eta plus an f divided by eta term. Now remember, in this setting, we know the number of fake users, right? That's why it's the fake aware setting. So I get to use this knowledge to augment my confidence intervals. So in particular, what the high level interpretation for this is that I'm being more conservative in my decision making. Okay? But the traditional UCB type algorithm would be very quick to jump the gun and say, hey, this product is better than this product. But because my confidence intervals are so large, this means that it takes much more time for me to come to a conclusion that product I is better than product J. Now, in particular, I'm going to combine these two with the following idea. So I'm going to say that product J is better than product I, as long as my lower bound for product I, that's the interval, that's the line that you see on the leftmost, is larger than the upper bound for product I. In other words, my most pessimistic interval for product J estimate is better than my most optimistic estimate for product I. Now, when this point is hit, I'm going to be super sure that product J is better than product I, and I get to add an edge here. Now, as I start constructing this graph, I can use this to build my product ranking. So as consumers start coming in, I get more data points. And as I get more data points, I'm going to start populating this graph with edges. Now, once this happens, I can use a topological ordering of this graph to construct my ranking. Why is this helpful, right? So imagine that I know that product J is better than product I, but I don't have any information between J and K. That's totally fine because the topological sort is going to ensure that product J is still ranked above product I. Okay. So in other words, I can use my partial information to construct better rankings. All right. So to sum up, the two main ideas here are one is to build a pairwise product relationship graph, and two, to be more conservative in my decision making by extending my confidence intervals proportional to f, that's the number of fake users. What we actually show is that these two simple ideas come together to come up with an algorithm that's almost close to open. Okay? So in particular, this fake aware ranking algorithm incurs a regret that's O of f plus log t divided by delta. Now, for those of you who are familiar with how these regret bounds work, the typical bandit regret is log t divided by delta. Now, because of the presence of these fake users, the typical regret is increased by a factor that's proportional to f. Now, is this term avoidable? Unfortunately, not yet. Okay, so to understand why, imagine a setting where f, the number of fake users, is basically close to t. So if all my users are fake, then I really can't learn anything useful, right? So in that case, you would expect the algorithm to have linear regret. So that gives you some intuition of why you need this additive term. Now, the reason why this is an improvement over the status quo is, remember what happened in the previous case. In the previous bad example, I had log t fake users and I had a regret that's O of t. That's extremely bad. Now, in this example, if you have log t fake users, my regret would still be O of log t. So that's a huge improvement over how these UCB type algorithms would work. Okay. So in settings where I know the number of fake users, I can use this knowledge to get regret that is linear in f and a traditional regret bound that's log t divided by delta. Is this okay with everyone? Any questions so far? So if this is okay, let's go to our more challenging setting. So remember, we increase the confidence intervals proportional to F. Now, as far as I know this factor F, things are pretty good because I can improve my confidence intervals. But the obvious question that comes about is, hey, what if you have no clue on what this factor F looks like? Okay, how are we going to widen the confidence interval? This is a challenge because sure, I can go ahead and widen this and I can be pretty pessimistic in how I widen this. But here's the problem. If I'm too pessimistic in widening my confidence interval, then my learning is going to be extremely slow, which is going to lead to poor regret. Now, if I make my confidence intervals really small, sure, I could learn much faster, but if there are too many fake users, then I run the risk of not being conservative enough, which is going to lead them to completely trick my algorithm, leading to bad regret. So that is this natural trade-off. I want to be just the right amount of conservative, but I don't know how good that is compared when you don't know this factor F. So how do we go about achieving this? Okay. So I'm going to go in an orthogonal direction for a couple of slides and present a fun example, and I'm hoping that some of you can answer this question. So in particular, I'm going to move from multi-arm bandits to real world bandits. So here's a fun toy problem for some of you to think about. So let's say that you've made it wealthy and invested in Amazon stock in '96, so you're now a millionaire, and you have these 3 amazing houses in Troy. So in particular, one of this is this huge castle with great security. The second one is a nice townhouse with okay security, and the third is something that's downtown, which is kind of okay but has poor security. You have a lot of money, and you want to spread this money out in these 3 houses. Okay. The challenge here is that you have a real world bandit or a thief who's going to hit one of these houses tonight, but you don't know which one the thief is going to hit. And the thief has complete knowledge. So they know the security level at each house, but the only constraint is that they only get to hit one of these houses. So given this constraint, what's the optimal way for you to store your money if you want to minimize your worst case loss? Okay, so I'm hoping that some of you can chime in on chat or by unmuting yourselves. But the question I want you all to answer is, if you had money to store in these 3 places, how exactly would you distribute the money across the 3 places? Or would you put all of this in one place if your goal is to minimize your worst case loss? Again, there are no wrong answers, so feel free to take a stab at it.
I think you have to define a little bit better what, for me at least, what worst case loss means and how much security actually affects the robber succeeding or not.
Yeah,
otherwise, I don't know how to answer.
Fair enough. I was just like hoping for a toy answer. So I think Viram got it in chat. So like the the kind of the simple idea that hopefully some of you take a first stab at is, you want to store this proportional to the security level, right? I agree with Elliot that, if you have to really know how things work to come up with something more sophisticated. But I think the first idea that you would hopefully come up with is, hey, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, but I also want to make use of this security information. So I think Larson's got it as well. So in particular, one simple way to store it to minimize your worst case loss, where I guess by worst case loss, I meant at the end of the day, I want to maximize the amount of money that I have left, is going to be to store proportional to the security level in each place. So the one with good security is going to have the most money. The one with bad security has okay security, okay money, and the one with little security, little money. With the idea being that the good security place is the one that has the maximum chance of repelling the invader. Okay. Now, I want to use this particular idea in my learning algorithm, but let's kind of take this one step further. So in the real world, if this was the kind of thing that, setting the problem that you were facing, then once the bandit hits, regardless of whether or not they're successful, you're going to use the knowledge of the bandit's modus operandi to upgrade the security accordingly in the other places. Okay? So I want to use these 2 ideas in my learning algorithm. So in particular, here's what we want to do. So one, I'm going to use this idea of not putting all my eggs in one basket by creating multiple learning algorithms that target different conservatism levels. So remember, our goal here is to extend my confidence intervals, but I don't know how much to extend it by. Okay? So I'm going to create a bunch of different parallel algorithms where each one has a confidence level that's increased by a certain different level. The second thing I want to do is this idea of learning based on the fake users' actions. So in particular, if the fake users manage to successfully infiltrate one of my algorithms, I want to use this knowledge to augment my other algorithms so that they don't fall prey to the same bad ideas again. All right, so far so good. So here's how this is going to work. So I'm going to introduce what I call as a multi-level learning algorithm. So how this works is that previously my learning algorithm was characterized by a product relationship graph. So now, instead of having just one graph, I'm going to have lots of different graphs where each graph represents the outcome of a different algorithm. Okay? So remember, an edge in this graph means that I know for sure that product J is better than product I. Now I'm going to call these different levels, with the idea being that the lower levels, such as level 1 and 2, are more aggressive in their decision making, and the upper levels are more conservative in their decision making. Okay. The way I'm going to implement this conservatism versus aggression is by selecting these levels with different probabilities at any given points in time. Let's go over this carefully. So in particular, I'm going to have these exponentially decreasing probabilities so that my first level is chosen with a high probability. The second level is chosen with a low probability, and so on. Now, every time a user arrives, I'm going to select only one of these levels with this probability. I know that these things don't add up to 1, so you can kind of augment the probability slightly to ensure that. So ignore that small bookkeeping issue. So every time a user arrives, I'm going to select one of these levels with this probability, and I'm going to show the user the ranking that's denoted by that level. So the effect that's going to be is that the so-called lower levels, such as level 1 and 2, they're going to be selected with a higher probability. That means that they see more fake users, so they have a higher risk of being corrupted. Now the higher levels are chosen with a small probability. So they see fewer fake users, so they have a lower risk of being corrupted. But there is a trade-off because the lower levels are chosen with a high probability, so they converge much faster. The higher levels are chosen with a small probability, so they converge slowly. Okay, so let me rephrase this. You have a natural trade-off between the speed of learning and the number of fake users you see. The more the fake users you see, and that happens at the lower levels, I can learn faster. Now, the fewer the fake users you see, that happens at the higher levels, I learn slower. So the idea behind this algorithm is that one of these different levels is going to have the optimal trade-off between learning speed and the amount of fake users, right? So remember, each of these levels targets a different conservatism level. Now, one of these different targets is optimal. I don't know which one is, but by the course of the algorithm, I'm going to end up converging upon the right one. Now, I've introduced these different levels, but as I mentioned, there are two big problems. Now, the lower levels see a lot of fake users. So I want to ensure correctness at the lower levels because they can be exposed to too many fake users and end up making too many bad decisions because they are chosen with a high probability. The upper levels, on the other hand, they tend to be more correct, but they can be extremely slow. So I need to introduce an additional mechanism to make them faster. So we're going to introduce this notion of cross-learning, and in particular, learning is going to happen across the different levels in both directions. The first thing that I introduce is what is called as downward cross-learning. Now, remember, the upper levels, such as levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, they tend to make decisions that are more correct because they see fewer fake users. So if I have an edge at a higher level, I'm more confident that this edge is going to be correct. So what downward cross-learning is going to do is it's going to help transfer these edges from the upper levels to the lower levels. So in particular, every time I have an edge at level 2, for example, or level 3 or level 4, I'm going to transfer this to all the levels below that upper level. Okay. Why do I do this? We're doing this because the upper levels are more correct in their decision-making process. The second thing we're going to introduce is this notion of upward cross-learning. Now remember, the upper levels tend to be very, very slow because they don't have enough samples. They're chosen with a small probability. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer samples from the lower levels to the upper levels, so that it's going to happen partially, so that every time I get some sample at the lower level, I'm using that knowledge to boost the learning speed at the upper level. So together, these two are called as bidirectional cross-learning. Now, what we show in the paper is that this algorithm gives you a regret that's f multiplied by log t divided by delta. Now, the previous algorithm had a regret that's f plus log t by delta. So the additive term becomes a multiplicative term here. Now, the loss in regret in some senses is unavoidable because this is a much harder set. Because I don't know f, I have to target these different levels, which kind of leads to poor regret compared to the previous algorithm. But this is still much better than the UCB kind of algorithms, because remember, our bad case still happens when f is log t. Okay, so when f is log t, this goes from being, let's say, a log t regret algorithm without fake users to a log square t algorithm, which is still pretty good because it's sublinear, right? So that's it for the two algorithms. I'm going to very briefly talk about the question of whether we can do better. So in particular, both my algorithms have a regret that's linear in this term f. This is bad because in reality, you can have tons and tons of fake clicks, right? When it comes to click bots, it's almost no effort for them to go around putting out fake clicks. So you're going to have a large number of fake clicks. But I want my dependence on f to be sublinear. And in particular, this is useful when f is something like square root t. So can I use some additional structural information, or can I make some assumptions to improve upon my regret bound from the worst case? All right. So to answer this question, I'm going to leverage two simple ideas that are very common in the product ranking settings. The first idea is that if you remember the bad example from earlier, all the fake users were concentrated at the beginning. Now that tends to be a very canonical type of bad example, but in reality, you may not exhibit this kind of fake users. Okay. So in reality, platforms can hire a product can hire fake users to behave in a very specific way. For example, every time a product's ranking falls below the first page, come and click on the product and boost its position. So I want to use the knowledge that in practice, not all fake users can be concentrated at the beginning. Now, the second thing that I want to use is that in practice, fake users give you feedback on multiple products. Now, when I say feedback, I mean that not fake users, real customers. So real customers give you feedback on multiple products. So when I say feedback, I mean that the customer views this product before making a decision. Remember, consumers don't generally just click on the first product that they see. They're going to look at lots of products before making a click decision. So I want to use both these assumptions, and here's how I formally model it. So I'm going to take the previous same model that I started out with. I'm still going to assume that my fake users are adversarial in their behavior, but I'm going to make two additional assumptions. Assumption one is that my fake users at any given time t, the number of fake users is going to be t to the power 1 minus epsilon for some constant epsilon. The effect this has is that not all my fake users are going to come at the beginning. Okay, they're going to be spread out more throughout the process. So if to see why that's the case, just plot how this, let's say set epsilon equal to 1/2 and plot what the square root t curve looks like. So you're going to have users still come in at the beginning. There's going to be a large concentration, but not all of the fake users are going to be at the beginning. You're still going to have few real customers at the beginning. Now, the second assumption I'm going to make is that at least a small fraction Q of my real customers provide feedback on all the products in my assortment. So in particular, if I have 20 or 40 products, I'm going to assume that at least 5% of my customers look at all 20 products to give you feedback on these. Okay. Now, with these two assumptions, we show a very surprising result. So in particular, what we show is that the same fork algorithm that we saw previously. So remember, previously, this algorithm had a regret that's f multiplied by log t. What we show is that the exact same algorithm, but with these two additional assumptions, can give you a regret that's much better. So to give you some intuition for what this term looks like, let's substitute epsilon equals to 1/2, so that the number of fake users at any point t is going to be a square root of t. Okay? So in this case, my fork algorithm previously would give you a regret. That's a regret in the square box that you see, so rectangle box that you see at the bottom, which would be square root t multiplied by log t. Now in this case, with these additional assumptions, I can improve this bound to log squared t. That's a huge improvement. Okay. And the reason this gets you a much better improvement is that because the fake users spread out throughout your time horizon, the algorithm has a much higher probability of detecting them earlier on in the process. So from the point of the platform, this is a double whammy, because not only do you get better regret, but I also detect the true optimal product ranking much earlier in my process, leading me to quickly converge to an optimal ranking. All right. So that's it for the results. I had a couple of things in the simulations, but I'm going to skip this for lack of time. But the main thing I do want to mention is this interesting behavior we observed in the simulations, which is that the fork algorithm, which had much worse theoretical regret bounds, seemed to be doing much better in practice. Okay? So what we suspect is that this algorithm does extremely well on these average case instances. This is something that we've not been able to formalize, but it's something that we're actively thinking about. Okay? And the other thing that's to glean from this place is that this idea of cross-learning can be quite useful even for a traditional bandit algorithm, especially when you have multiple things running. You want to be able to use what you've learned in one aspect to be able to enhance your outcomes in the other aspects. And we're starting to see a lot of works that do something like this. So recently I saw work about learning in something like hospitals, where you have hospitals at different locations, and you want to learn the demand at these different locations, but the demand can be slightly different across these different locations. So what they do is introduce a very similar cross-learning mechanism to use the data from one location to augment the learning process in another location. So if you're thinking about these kind of problems, I think it's worth considering cross-learning to augment your setting. Farhad, I missed your question, so I'm going to take it at the end when I conclude. So let me conclude here with some high-level intuition. So one, the first thing I want you all to think about is that there's been tons of progress in online learning. Now, unfortunately, many of these algorithms are easy to manipulate in practice. Okay? So if you are in a setting where some sort of manipulation is prevalent, you should start thinking about robust learning. Now, the second thing is that the behavior of these fake users is increasingly more sophisticated. So what we do is we use the terminology of the adversarial user to come up with an algorithm that's robust against any sort of behavior that's used by the fake user. The third thing is to start thinking about structural informations. So I think many of us in the theoretical computer science community do think about worst case guarantees, which can be quite bad in this setting. So if you're designing algorithms for a particular application, I think it's useful to think about how you can leverage that kind of application to see if I can improve my bounds from the worst case of square root t to something that's much better like log t. And these kind of improvements can make a big difference in practice. Now, looking ahead, there's a bunch of research directions which I like. In particular, we looked at fake clicks here, and you can extend these insights to something like fake reviews. But what we can't do is, what if I have multiple sources of attack by fake users? So in particular, if I have fake clicks and fake reviews happening at the same time, can we leverage some sort of additional information to improve upon my bounds? The second thing is looking at the policy and the game theoretic implications. So in particular, there's been a ton of works that look at the question of how should a platform start taking down fake reviews? Okay, the obvious answer is, hey, shouldn't you be taking down all the fake reviews that you can? But these works have this counterintuitive result that if you take down too many fake reviews too fast, you can affect the health of the marketplace, because the marketplace ends up becoming very sparse. So these policy level questions are also very interesting. The final question, and one that I think we have little information about, is how do consumers react to fake reviews? So if any of you look at the behavioral side of things, this is a great question. So I'll take questions and I'll leave you with a fun question as well. So there are these two nice reviews that are here. One of them is real and one of them are fake. I want you all to look at this and post on the chat or maybe just chime in. Which of these reviews do you think is fake? The reason I'm asking this question is there's a recent study where looking at how good actual people are at detecting fake reviews. And what was found out is that individual people are much worse than the actual algorithm, than machine learning algorithms at taking out fake reviews. So clearly, we have a really smart crowd here with lots of PhD students and PhDs. So I'm very curious to know if this crowd is better than an average person who's been surveyed for this. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll take questions. All right, I see Farhad's question. Yeah, Farhad, that's a great question. And actually, you can show some kind of result type and direction. So the problem with reviews is that you're going to end up only making one purchase, and you would only give review for that single product. Whereas in the case of clicks, right, you can click on multiple products. So I'm not sure if you can relax the assumption for reviews, but for clicks, you can definitely make the assumption that an average user gives like 10 or 20 clicks or views. And then based on that, I can kind of get slightly a better trade-off between the bound that I have and the worst case bound. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, Shishan. So in fork, the error bars for the different levels are the same. The interpretation for this is that the different levels do have different error bars. And in some sense, that is guaranteed by the probability of selecting these different levels. So instead of messing with the error bars, which makes the analysis a bit more complicated, I'm messing with the probability that a level is chosen. This has the same effect as changing the error bars for the different levels, but keeping the probability fixed. Okay, we'll take questions, but I'm curious to hear answers. So could some of you post in chat which of these two reviews you think is fake? So let me read out some of the answers. John's claiming it for the left one. Vijay is on the left. Sharmishna is on the left. Michael is on the left. Farhad is also on the left. George is on the left. Tirong is hedging his bets. Noah's on the left. Lorson is going against the grain. Stephen right, left. Okay, so we see a lot of votes for the left. So it actually turns out that the one on the right is fake. And I kind of posted this example for this very purpose. Sorry, John, but the reason I think many of us, including myself, gravitate towards the right review being authentic is that this kind of looks like what a person would have written, right? Because they use a lot of personal anecdotes, like, my husband and I, they use capitalization, a lot of exclamations, and the left review looks pretty informal, whereas the right review looks very personal. But it actually turns out that the right review is the one that's fake. And it even has a spelling mistake, by the way. But the point I want to convey with this is that the people who post fake reviews are getting extremely sophisticated. Okay, they're starting to mimic real reviews as much as they can. And in particular, I heard this nice podcast with where a fake reviewer was interviewed, and they even said that they post a review where almost everything is positive, but they even post one small negative thing in a fake review, so that fake reviews get much harder to detect. So the one important thing, if you're interested in this as an area of research, is we need to start rethinking how we try to tackle fake reviews. So on the one hand, there's been tons of progress in machine learning to detect fake reviews, and those ideas are reasonably successful. But I think ideas based on detection can only get you so far. So I think we need to start thinking about approaches as one, this work does, like in robustness, or maybe approaches that have more behavioral or incentivizing side, or maybe ideas from mechanism design, to start thinking about how we tackle this huge fake review problem, because this isn't going away anywhere, right? This isn't a technology problem, it's a human problem. So hopefully this kind of comes up with, gives you enough ideas to think about this problem. And if any of you have any ideas and you want to discuss this further, feel free to email me. I'm happy to have a further discussion on this. So thanks so much. If you have any questions about the talk, please let me know.
All right. Thank you for a great talk. Yeah, I guess there's no more questions. So,
I mean, I definitely have some questions, but maybe I can ask them afterwards or something if people want to leave. Okay, let me ask one then.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess just a high-level question. First, just to make sure I understand, right? The sort of high-level problem here is, like in your bad example, you have the fake clicks come in first, and so you end up sort of with a bad hypothesis on what the correct ordering is, and then in normal learning, that would get fixed by the future people. But here, they don't even see the things they should be clicking on. Yeah. And so I guess the high-level fix, which is essentially what's going on here, is that you say, okay, let's not stick with this hypothesis too much. Let's keep learning. Let's have some positive probability of slower learning, of presenting other orders to the future people than what we have so far.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You want to be more conservative in your learning approach.
Yeah, okay, so good. So I'm happy I understood that. So I guess my question is, how related is this to a slightly different setting where instead of fake clicks, you don't actually have any fake people, you just have a population, but the actual preferences might be changing?
Great question. There's been a lot of work on learning under non-stationary environments.
Right.
That's some very nice work, by the way. It's a pretty rich literature. At a high level, I find so some of the techniques are kind of similar, but to me, there's like a fundamental difference between the two literatures. So the non-stationary work usually has this kind of a slow drift. Okay, so you have an underlying target you're trying to learn, and this target slowly drifts across time. Whereas the behavior of fake users is kind of like a rubber band, right? So these guys come in at some point, they kind of, mess up your system a little bit, and then kind of takes you a while to go back to your normal state. So in my opinion, I think this would be like learning in non-stationary environments, but it's some sort of a volatility fixed in the middle, where you have people coming in the middle, messing things up, and then things go back to your normal stage. So I'd say it's like the difference between a slow drift and a quick pull, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess it's possible that your algorithm, the algorithm will still work if you just have if these are not fake people, but it's just a population with different views, right? It's adversarial, that will still give you what you want.
Yeah.
And maybe your algorithm will even work. Like if you say, here's an assumption about how people's views change, or maybe how they're perturbed by like weird short-term events, and then they go back to normal, then maybe this will still apply even to that.
I believe so. But in fact, I think the literature on these non-stationary environments do use similar ideas and the similar notation. So they have this thing that, at every point in time, your target can change by some small fraction epsilon. And the total change in time is like epsilon multiplied by t. The other thing is, I think even the approaches are quite similar, is that you don't converge quickly. I think you keep learning throughout the process so that you don't lose track of what you're learning. But I kind of imagine that in this setting, you still have some sort of a convergence. You just want to converge slowly. You don't have this thing that you're learning throughout the process.
Yeah, I was like more thinking of like fads, where you have something which people get excited about for a few days, and then it goes back to the long-term preferences. And so anyway, my other, okay, only one other question then. My other question was, so the basic, the basic assumption about how users behave, I mean, I guess it's a pretty standard type of behavioral thing, where they just come in and then they either click or not, and then so basically whether they click on a particular product or not is totally independent. So they're just going through it one at a time. I mean, I know this is pretty standard, but I guess my question is, I don't know, I guess my question is how reasonable is this assumption? Because, I can imagine certainly somebody coming in, and if they see a really good product and then lots of terrible products, they'll probably click on the good product. Well, if we see several pretty good ones, they won't. And if that's so, if this is not independent of each other, then like this topological sorting stuff shouldn't really apply anymore, right? Because then it's you can have like I prefer this product to this one and this one to this. We can even have cycles. Who knows? In terms of I don't know. I guess my question is, how reasonable is that assumption? I'm sure it's commonly used, but like, has anybody tried looking at other behaviors where you actually care about the overall set of products and then clicking based on that?
Okay, yes and yes. So good question. And this is a question I get a lot in the business school side of things, because this model is kind of taboo for people who are in the operations field. So I have a good answer for this.
Really?
Okay. So two things. So first is that the click probability does depend on the product. So it's mu sub I for product I.
Yeah.
The second thing is that the click probability is not completely independent of the ranking, right? So in particular, let's say the click probability for product J here is mu J. That's good. Now, this click probability is only conditional on me viewing this product. So in order for me to view this product, I need to not click on the first products on the top and then come to the one at the bottom. So in that sense, you have this dependence between the different products. But to go back to maybe a more general question, are there other click models that would be more appropriate here? There are these multinomial logit models that are quite popular in this, where basically the idea is that you can assume that the consumer looks at the first K products, and then once you look at this K product, the product that I purchase is going to depend on some individual characteristic of that product divided by the click characteristics for the other products. So for example, let's say that I like the first product by an amount that's 100, and the second product that I like it by some amount that's like 1111. So then my click probability for the first product would be 100 divided by 100 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, or something like that. So you can kind of use this to capture this idea that your decision is completely dependent on the assortment. And I would say that this is in fact the more common model when it comes to the assortment selection literature. The challenge here is that when you come to product ranking problems, where customers look at things sequentially, it's not very clear how do you extend these this logit models to these kind of settings, right? Because, okay, you want this idea that the ranking does matter. So because people are more likely to purchase the top ranked products. And in particular, people, maybe I end my search in position 3 and I'm just going to purchase something in the first 3 positions. So you want to incorporate that kind of an idea, but you also want to have the thing that you mentioned where my decisions do depend on the relative ordering of the different products. So I think this model does capture those kind of things to a certain extent, but it doesn't fully capture what you mentioned. And I think there's been some very nice work where if you do assume the logit models under some assumptions, you can still show that the optimal ranking still orders based on the click probability.
Okay.
Under some assumptions. The other kind of assumption is that this ends up being submodular for the most cases. So then you can show that some sort of a greedy ordering can get you, I don't know, 1/2 or 1 minus 1 over E of the optimal ranking. That's the other way to make the problem more tractable for more general models.
Right. I guess I won't hold people up.
I can send you the paper.
Yeah, sure.
Thinking about, yeah.
And we should also, yeah, we should talk sometime maybe. But
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for having me over. It was fun.
by the way, I found out this talk was happening when I received the invitation, like from the colloquium. I didn't know about it.
It's the problem of not running into people in the water cooler.
Yeah, I know. It's really a problem. Yeah, but yeah, I only found out when I received the email to everyone. But
I'm glad you didn't delete the email.
All
Do
right.
you have any other questions? It's pretty late, so.
Doesn't look like there's anything more. So thank you one more time.
Yeah.
It's great.
Thanks for having me over, George, Alex, and Liron. Appreciate it.
And tell me if you ever want to talk about anything. So.